A UFC fighter got jumped by his best friend, who is not a man to mess around with. To say that he crossed the line would be an understatement, and to say that he did not deserve what happened to him would be a lie. This was one of the most interesting UFC stories that dragged on for many years, and fortunately for all fans of fighting drama, it did not end up in the cage. Accordingly, today, we are covering friends who have turned into bitter enemies, and UFC welterweights Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington are in the main roles. To find out what happened, how it went, and whether it even ended, you have to stick around until the end of the video. After successfully participating in illegal fights on the streets of Miami, Jorge Masvidal decided to use his fists to earn money in a legal but no less brutal way. Before he became known as a crafty UFC striker who was unlucky in his career, Gamebred fought in several US promotions to make a name for himself. The dangerous guy from the street started his professional career in 2003, but it wasn't until 2007 that he found his home in one of the best MMA gyms, American Top Team, where he stayed until retirement. Jorge fought worldwide, having the courage to accept anyone as an opponent. Known as the journeyman of MMA due to his 35-17 record, he would go into the octagon to give his all regardless of whether he would win or lose. However, after all the wars he went through, the biggest battle was in the gym he called home, and that was at the end of his rich career. Colby Covington came from a completely different background and personality than Masvidal. As a child from an athletic family, Covington achieved success on the wrestling mat during his school days. He got the nickname Chaos from his mother, the deity from Greek mythology who was the first to emerge at the creation of the universe. He earned it because of his unpredictable behaviour and relentlessness, which Colby later showed to the world in the octagon and on the microphone. Covington dreamed of becoming the best wrestler in the world, but when he finished his education, he got a reality check and realised that wrestling couldn't pay the bills or feed his family. In order to not fall into the abyss like most who work 9-to-5 jobs every day, Colby got lucky because his first job was wrestling. In 2011, he was brought to ATT by Dan Lambert, who wanted to improve the wrestling game of his fighters. And high-level wrestling Covington was the perfect person for that. That was the day he met Jorge, and from that moment, the two were inseparable until things completely fell apart. 3 years older Gamebred was like a big brother to Covington. When Colby decided to go pro, Jorge was his first and biggest supporter. An elite wrestler and an elite striker were a dream duo. They sharpened each other's skills, shared knowledge from two different sports, and evolved together. Although Masvidal was much more experienced in professional MMA, he arrived in the UFC in 2013 after 31 fights. Colby found a shortcut and signed for the promotion a year later, and there wasn't a fight without them in each other's corner. In the following years, they climbed the UFC ladder, going through thick and thin. Due to his fighting style, Colby proved a more successful fighter, but Jorge didn't mind watching his buddy grow. Even more, when Covington's girlfriend kicked him out of the house, it was Masvidal who invited him to sleep on his couch, lent him money, and shared food, air, and time with him. Everything is easier when your best friend is watching your back, right? Two boys were determined to succeed together, but they had no idea how badly everything would end. Their private problems would soon be brought before the eyes of the whole world. Although Colby was more successful and went on a winning streak, it didn't guarantee his success. Actually, things went sideways. You know how the UFC business works. The fact that Covington had 7 wins and only 1 loss in 3 years meant nothing to the promotion. His style is classified as boring, and his humble character is not good for promotion. They told the manager that the American wrestler's contract would expire, and they weren't interested in renewing it. Colby had 1 more fight left, and he needed a miracle. He got Damian Maia as his opponent in Brazil and decided to create, well, chaos. After a convincing victory, Colby transformed his persona and called all of Brazil a dump, adding, "All you filthy animals suck." The UFC was delighted with this move, and not only did they offer him a contract, but in the next fight, he got a chance for the interim belt. However, Covington solved one problem, but created a completely different one. The trash-talking era that Chaos ushered in didn't just involve opponents. His ATT colleagues were also targeted, and this created tensions in the gym and began to destroy discipline. The first problem with Masvidal arose when Colby did not want to pay their boxing coach regardless of the pre-fight agreement. This awakened the fire of hatred in Jorge because he was the one who introduced the two. It was impossible to keep the whole team together under these conditions. So, Coach Lambert sent a message to the group chat and told them to find a new gym for training. Covington quickly came to terms with the decision and looked for a new place under the sun. Masvidal, as a long-time and stubborn member, returned after a few months and continued training. However, he neither forgave nor forgot the things that this now ex-friend said and did. The showdown between the two characters was inevitable. Between 2020 and 2021, both men were destroyed twice by dominant champion Kamaru Usman in fights that produced top pay-per-view numbers. Dana White was aware of their personal problems and decided to make another entertaining story after both fighters failed in 4 title shots. On the other hand, he did them a favour and arranged the opportunity to solve problems in a legal and manly way. The date is scheduled from the beginning of 2022, and in the media preparations for the fight, the fire between the former friends had spread. Jorge characterised Colby as someone who sold his moral compass and good relationships to gain fame, calling him ungrateful and a sellout. Colby, however, retorted twice as much by mentioning private matters. He called Masvidal a bad father and husband, a liar, a thug, and everything that should be kept out of trash talk. The fighters may not have enjoyed this moment, but the fans sure did. Those who hoped Colby would be punished were left disappointed, and Jorge Masvidal had a long and difficult night. The duel proceeded just as everyone had anticipated when fight night finally arrived. For 25 minutes, it was fireworks. But nothing unexpected happened in the end. 5 rounds of manhandling were inflicted on Jorge. Colby demonstrated that in addition to being a more skilled and physically fit fighter, he is also far smarter. This was the first time his trash talk paid off, and the opponent responded just as he wanted him to. Masvidal was clearly fueled with rage and allowed it to overcome him. He got exhausted early because he wanted to take Colby's head ASAP. Covington's unrelenting cardio proved superior once again. Even after the final bell, security personnel had to keep them apart. After such confrontations, fighters often bury the hatchet after the fight. However, this is not one of those moments. Masvidal took the beating and promised to exact revenge on Covington no matter what. It didn't take long for the drama to continue elsewhere. More precisely, it took 15 days. Colby visited the Miami Beach Puppy Steak restaurant with friends, and one of them made the rookie mistake of posting their location, calling Covington the king of Miami. Information travels fast through social media, but not faster than Masvidal, who rushed to the restaurant. One hoodie, a surgical mask, and a pair of fists were the only things needed for this trip. While Covington was enjoying a night out with his buddies, he had no idea what was lurking on the other side of the door. When he was leaving the restaurant, a bunch of people approached to take pictures and ask for signatures. They managed to hold him off for about 5 minutes, and when Colby decided to end the rally, he crossed the street and felt several blows from the side. Under the hood and mask, he recognised the hair and eyes of his former friend. Even if he did not identify his face, he would surely recognise his voice. A voice that told him, "You shouldn't have talked about my kids." But Jorge wasn't alone. He brought several friends just in case things got really ugly. A terrified Colby's first instinct was to retreat to the restaurant and do what he loves most, call the police. He blew a whistle on Gamebred, stating he gave him a concussion and 2 punches, breaking his front teeth. Well, play stupid games and win stupid prizes, right? Masvidal, on the other hand, exposed himself when he returned home and posted a video challenging Colby to the Show Your Face Challenge. Funny that after this act, he pleaded not guilty when he was arrested. Well, Covington was right about one thing. Jorge is really prone to crime when necessary. And this time, it was super necessary. However, this maneuver by Gamebred received a bad response from the fans. The act was considered cowardly because he got manhandled in an MMA fight. Jorge was arrested 2 days later and charged with aggravated battery and criminal mischief, but he was soon released on a $15,000 bond. However, Colby's behaviour did not sit with the fans either. They concurred that you cannot use derogatory language with Masvidal in a professional setting and hope he won't find you on your way to the grocery store to punch a hole in your face. Luckily, these two didn't meet again. And it all ended with a hurt Colby and a two-piece with a soda being served in front of the Miami Beach Happy restaurant.